So before we talk about the Yojimbo 2, let's take a second and talk about the history of the actual knife and Michael Janich as a whole. Michael Janich designed the Yojimbo in 2004, which was a moderate success. It's based off of his original Ronin, which was inspired by a desire to really make the best possible tactical knife. In particular, this is very much a tactical knife. By all means, does EDC tasks fantastically, but tactical was the original design concept, and it very much lives in the DNA of this knife. So Michael Janich took the time and effort to really try to master what a tactical knife should be, and he tried a whole bunch of different blade designs, from bowies to drop points to tontos to everything between the lines, right? And what he really landed on is something that we know today already, is that a Wharncliffe is a damn good cutter, and as such it is a fantastic force multiplier during the use of self-defense. To put it simply, god damn it can cut. To get this design off the ground was honestly a struggle. Nobody had ever seen a Wharncliffe self-defense knife before. Honestly, the idea was kind of ridiculous. But Michael Janich really fought, and he really believed in this concept. He made something called a pork man, which is the funniest thing ever, but it's also so accurate, right? You know, as a martial artist myself, I really respect him going to this length. These are things that I do now. I don't record videos about them. I'm kind of embarrassed about it, but he just, broadcasts it plainly. Because simply put, when you are training in a martial art and you're doing all this constant repetition, you're really trying to master your craft. You can only really see so much in training, right? Sparring only really gives so much of an idea. You really want to see if what you're actually designing and what you're creating and what you're fighting towards does something, which leads to all sorts of crazy ass things. Me personally, I started fighting strangers on the streets like a fucking jackass when I was a teenager, and I learned firsthand that what I was doing worked very well. Michael Janich, being a much more responsible and reasonable adult, made a man out of pork and cut with it, and it showed his concept worked wonderfully. Mike Snooty made the prototype of the Ronin, which was the original forefather to the Yojimbo, or what it would soon become. Eventually, Janich partnered with Spyderco, and they made this very interesting design, which is the original Yojimbo 1. Now, first and foremost, this is a weird looking abomination, kind of ugly looking knife. But looking at it from a martial art background, I immediately get it and what it's designed for. And most things that are really, really effective as weapons don't particularly look very interesting. A great example of this is the Viking Sax, which looks very sort of strange, but damn, that design can 100% cut. And just like the Viking Sax, this thing was very much a combination of form and function, and the aesthetics did not matter. This design was widely considered to be an overgrown box cutter. It met with middling success, but nonetheless, the foundations for greatness were laid. Multiple redesigns, prototypes, and years of personal experience and growth later, Spyderco and Michael Janich reconnected and created the Yojimbo 2. The Yojimbo and Ronin series of knives also have a very firm background in martial blade concept, which is Michael Janich's own personal knife fighting school. Now, this last part I'm genuinely ashamed of, right? But I have actually attended this, and I almost got into a fight with Michael Janich. Not because he's a dick, because I was a gigantic, arrogant fucking man-child. At this point in time, I was really heavily into Muay Thai and Jiu-Jitsu and some other things. And I was basically being like, this will work, right? But like, this is better. This is better. Fuck this. You can't do this if I do this. And just basically being an arrogant little kid, right? And to be clear, Michael Janich does not challenge me to fight. I called him out, to which he basically laughed at me, which is the appropriate answer when a gigantic ginger's like, I'll fucking take you. And I was asked to leave the program, which I did. And years later, I profoundly regret it. I could have learned a lot there. But either way, here I am now, and I have lessons to learn and stories to tell. So it's not a complete loss, just most of a loss. Also, Michael Janich, if you happen to be watching this video, I doubt you will, but if you do, if you remember me, just know from the bottom of my heart, like, I really, really apologize. I was an arrogant, violent, I could say wannabe thug, but I very much fully was a thug, was firmly in that mentality, and I made a fool of myself. And I genuinely and truly apologize for disrespecting you as a person, as well as your school and your work. And hey, years down the line, I'm sitting here in a shitty office with some crazy ass background images talking about how much I love your design. So, you mean, it all kind of went full circle, and I still like a jackass years later because I understand your design. I understand what you're trying to teach me. I was just too hard-headed to listen. And strangely enough, right, the reason why I ever even bought an original Ronin fixed blade is because I wanted to laugh at this man's design. I got it in hand and I was like, ooh, this isn't bad at all. I want to hate this, but I kind of can't. And then I got the Yojimbo 1 and I did hate that knife, genuinely. I understood what it was there for, but the way it looked, I could not get over it. Then the Yojimbo 2 released, and I thought it was okay, but then I started seeing custom pictures of scales and everything else, and I was like, all right, I'm in. To date, I have had 8, count it, 8 different Yojimbos, as well as the Yojimbo, which I kind of hated. I have used these knives in self-defense training quite a lot, but I've also went through reams and reams and reams and pallets and pallets and pallets of cardboard. I've really worked with these knives a whole bunch because they cut fantastically. And the way they are designed, man, you just really get that crazy amount of control for a very precise cut. Hell, if you want to, you can hold it like this and basically have a scalpel. It's crazy. This is my favorite work knife by far in a warehouse setting. But speaking about that warehouse setting, the reason why I've owned so many of these knives is I've broken quite a few of them. To be clear, that's not Michael Janich's fault. That is the inherent weakness of this thumb hole opening mechanism. When you're really just hardcore getting it, these can snap. It's fairly unlikely. You have to really, and I mean really, be beaten on that knife, which I definitely beat on my property pretty damn bad, which is why they've broken. If you don't do that, you'll probably be fine. But I very much want there to be a release of this without the Spidey hole. Hell, if I have to open it like this, I don't care. I would love that. I'd buy it immediately. That's never going to happen though. But in all my time using knives, right, this is the highest compliment I can pay. I have owned thousands, literally thousands, probably even 10,000 at this point in time knives. I buy things, I sell things, I trade things, and I move things on almost daily. For all the content on my channel, you probably see maybe 3 or 4% of the total number of knives that come through my hands on a daily basis. I am, for lack of a better terminology, obsessed. But I have always owned a Yojimbo. More often than not, I own 2, and then once the other one comes in, I sell a different one. But there's always one. There's always, literally always, at least one of these knives in my collection at any point in time. And beyond a review score, beyond any possible problems, that is the highest thing I can praise this knife for. No other knife has done that. Everything else has been moved on, right? I'll be like, I'm tired of this knife, whatever. It was great, but fuck it, I'm over it. And later on, I might buy a different version of it, right? Or I might the same knife again. But I'm never like, you know what? I undoubtedly love this knife. I don't want to let this go. I want something different, but I still need this in the collection. No other knife has ever done that. So if you're still here after that very goddamn long intro, let's get to the actual review. Sorry, folks, I had a lot to say. Now, let's break this down into categories. First off, ergonomics. Now, I have size 2XL hands. Mostly I have size 2XL wide hands with stubby fingers, right? My hands are retarded. I have these super wide ass hands and I have little sausage fingers. Even still, this fits my hands. I do have a little bit sticking off the very end, but not much at all. And the way this is designed to be held, which is to have your thumb planted on this ramp right here, means that even if I wanted to go a little higher up, I still could. Though having my fat finger in this chola right here is by all means the best way to go. But it feels good. I would not say it is perfect. I would not say it is great, but it is definitely very, very good. I have custom scales on mine because the original G10 for me has a whole bunch of hot spots. But the good news about Spyderco is you can get all sorts of crazy ass custom scales. These ones are from Aramis. I actually bought this knife from a secondary market about like 3 or 4 months ago. I also have another set in red carbon fiber, another set in micarta. I have, again, quite a few of these knives. But right now it's around the Halloween time, though given my normal track record, you probably see this in December because I take forever to edit videos. But right now it's around Halloween, so orange and black definitely works. Now, as far as the compression lock, I am not a huge fan of the compression lock. To be clear, it is 100% functional. There is no real problem, it's just my own personal biases, but I'm not a huge fan. To be clear, like the Benchmade access lock, I'm also not a huge fan of. I just like the old school liner lock and or frame lock. For me, it's just funner. But this is by all means good to go for EDC, and for self-defense, yeah, this is a very solid piece. The compression lock will naturally fall into the small of your hand, so you'll naturally wrap right here. And the odds of this coming undone with this little piece of your hand right there, even under extreme force, I mean, I guess it's technically possible, but it is really, really unlikely. On the other hand, a liner lock during combat scenarios, somebody wants to actually grab the blade, they can very much twist it, and you can theoretically pop your finger right here. It's happened before in training, but like, I mean, I don't know if that's really an issue, but for me, I do prefer the liner lock, but the frame lock, or excuse me, but the but the compression lock in this case is 100% good to go. Also, if you're fidgety, I'm kind of not, but if you are fidgety, it's fun. As you can see, I'm kind of failing right now because I'm not a big fidget person, so I have very little practice at all. But if you are that, it works. Now, normally this has a lynch clip on it, but for the course of this video, even though I have custom scales on it anyways, so why'd I leave the clip on for this is beyond me. Whatever, I'm an idiot. I put the original Spyderco clip back on, and it's very much a hot spot. It's not bad, but this very heavy swoop right here, you know, you can feel it in your hand. As far as the actual carry though, it really is good to go. There is kind of like a pendulum effect in your pocket because the way it actually holds, but it's not really a problem whatsoever. The clip from the factory is good to go. Again, the scales to me though from the factory, I don't like at all. But again, if you don't like the scales, there are so many custom options out there. Now, as far as the actual steel, you can find these in S30V, you can find them in M4, this one's in S90V, and that variety is fantastic, right? Because for me, this is my box cutter. So I very much want that S90V, and I want to be able to never pretty much sharpen my knife. S90V is a pain in the ass to sharpen, but if you really just basically use it for just cutting boxes, I might have to sharpen this knife once a year. I had to sharpen it yet, and I have gone through tons and tons and tons of cardboard, and here even now is how it performs. So as you can see, what we have is a knife that first and foremost is really designed to work, and it absolutely obliterates cardboard. There is virtually no resistance at all. The greatest thing I can say about this knife is that when you cut with it, you almost don't feel it. It's almost like the knife just takes control and the actual momentum of your strikes just go straight on through and glide. As far as paper, it does definitely go through that as well, but you know, I've said it many times on my channel before, I don't think anyone's out there going, I'm going to shred a whole ream of paper all by myself with my knife. Most folks actually want to work with their products, and this thing is an absolute workhorse. I love the way this knife cuts. Now, let's talk about the overall aesthetics. And this, simply put, is a polarizing and, dare I say, a weird looking design. Now, to be clear, that weird look is very much to facilitate the way it is actually used, which for me, I get it. It looks this way for a reason, but I like the way it looks personally, especially modified, but a lot of people don't. So this is very much open up to your own personal interpretation of it. I like it. Most folks don't. If you do, cool. If you don't, that's fine as well. And if you really, really hate it, there's still plenty of knives out there for you. Me personally, I kind of love this. It is distinctive at the very least. Now, one thing I talk about in my reviews is very much the proposition of value, which is that, is this knife worth the price. And that's kind of a slippery slope, right? Because I think the original S30V version kind of isn't. It's good, to be very, very clear, but for just a little bit extra, you can get steels and finishes that are just better, in my humble opinion. S30V is a good steel. People hate on it all the time, right? But that's not because it's a bad steel. It's because it's a steel that is pretty much everywhere nowadays. But getting this in M4 is fantastic, or in this one, this S90V I have right here, is fantastic for just a little bit extra. And then I really, just in general, do not like Spyderco's G10. I actually love G10. I love my Carta more, but G10 is fantastic. These scales right here are still in this beautifully contoured G10, but the flat, hyper-textured Spyderco G10, I don't understand the appeal of. But even still, the proposition of value for this, I think, is definitely there, though it's kind of teetering on the line of being overpriced, in my personal opinion. Now, to close it off, let's talk about how it all comes together. The ergonomics blend perfectly into the philosophy of use. You can apply a generous amount of force on objects, people, if you wanted to, through cardboard, anything else. The way this knife is designed and everything sits, it's really meant to just apply a crazy amount of force, and it very much does that fantastically. As far as a self-defense application, it's not my favorite self-defense blade because I don't really fight like that. But this is very, very solid, simplistic, clean, and from a self-defense standpoint, reliable. Now, from an EDC standpoint, which is how I carry this knife, man, again, similar to self-defense, everything just comes together. I do think from the box, from the factory, you need to modify the scales and you need a different clip. But as far as the actual bones here, fantastic. And even from the actual factory, it's still good. I just think you can make it great with some modifications. So for me, everything very much comes together in a beautiful way. I love the tapered handle, which very much produces positive reinforcement all the way down. The action, once properly tuned, is fantastic. The edge geometry is one of the best in the game. And overall, this is an iconic design that people love, and it stood the test of time. And Michael Janich is one of the forefathers of our industry because of it, and this knife is a classic. My overall, very long-term, long-use, hard-use, beat the fuck out of review for the Spyderco Yojimbo 2 is going to be a 9.5 out of 10. Over years, over broken blades, over hard use, over warranty replacements, over so many different things, this knife, in one version or another, has served me very well. And like I said before, this will never not be in my collection. I will always have at least one Yojimbo 2. So, self-defense score, we're going to give this an 8 out of 10. This is my personal belief system. It might be very different for you. Personal preference is just that, personal preference. EDC, honestly, a 10 out of 10. Overall, in all categories, a 9.5 out of 10. That's not how math works, but whatever. It's my channel, so we're going with it. But my own personal opinions are just my own personal opinions. Please leave yours in the comments below. And what does your Yojimbo 2 look like? Do you rock it stock? Do you rock it modified? And what is your story with this knife? This knife's been around for a long, long time. So in the comment section, tell me if you love this knife, why you love this knife, and if you don't love this knife, why are you wrong? That's a joke, by the way. If you hate this knife, that's fine. Personally, I don't get it, but that's your own personal entitlement. As always, folks, I love you all with all of my heart. Please take care. And at this point in time, we're at 37 minutes on the actual counter, so probably going to be like 25-minute long final video. So this is the Spyderco Yojimbo 2 long-term hard use movie or series or whatever. Either way, one and done. I love you guys. Long ass video. If you stuck through to the very end, I appreciate you very, very much. As always, I love you all, and bye-bye.